All right, guys, we're going to go over these questions on function composition. So when we did notes number 9, we focused on adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So today we're only going to focus on composition, where you take an entire function as an input and put it into an entirely different function. Okay. Now, most of these problems that we're going to do are going to have a number that's in these parentheses, which is, I'm going to show you the way that I treat these problems when there's a number there. A few of them, just 2 of them, have this letter X. So it is a little different when you have the variable there. So like I said, most of them will be like 1 and 2, but you definitely need to know what to do when there is an X in those parentheses. So let's start with the first one here. The idea is when you have this composition, right, this right here, that symbol means f of g of 3. So the way I write it is f of g of 3. Okay, so what I want you to do for right now is just ignore that first letter and only focus on what's inside those parentheses. So doing g of 3. So in this case, I'm going to go to my g of x function, which is right above here, and do 3 times, plug in 3 for x, and then do minus 2. When you do that, you get 9 minus 2, which is 7. Now, that's not the answer. That is the same as g of 3. Okay, so now I'm going to write f of g of 3, but I'm not writing g of 3 because I know what it is. G of 3 is the same as 7. All right, so what most students start to see when they do this process, when it has a number in those parentheses, is that you're really doing 2 evaluations to get the answer here. All right, so now we're going to do f of 7, which is this function over here, 2x squared. So 2 times 7 squared, that's 2 times 49. 2 times 49 is going to be 98. So f of g of 3 is the same as 98. And that's how you do composition with a number. Let's do number 2. Number 2, you can see that we have that number there. So h of d of 12. Okay, like before, I'm just going to focus on the inside part here, which is d of 12, and kind of ignore that h to start. So d of 12 is going to be 6 over 12, which reduces to 1/2, or 0.5. Again, that's not the answer, but that is now what I'm plugging into that h of x function. So h of 0.5 is going to be 3 minus 4 times 0.5. Half of 4 is going to be 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. So h of d of 12 is the same as 1. Okay, so now we're into the questions where you have those variables x. All right, so this is a little bit different. What I want you to do is we're first going to say this is g of h of x. So I'm actually going to start with this g function, and I'm going to write the g of x function 3x minus 2. But what I want you to do is I don't want you to write x. I want you to do a big box. All right? So again, I'll remind you, that's 3x minus 2. So remember, this box, right, is my input. It is my x. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put whatever is in these parentheses into this box. Okay, and so inside those parentheses is h of x. This entire function right here, 3 minus 4x, is going to go into this box in parentheses. And that is function composition. I know we're going to do a lot of problems, but when they have a number, it's just going to feel kind of like 2 different evaluations. But this process here for 3 and 4 is the process of function composition. So now I have g of h of x, right? Because I plugged in, I should make this correct here. So this is really g of h of x, right? Plugging in that function as the input. Distribute the 3, you get 9 minus 12x minus 2. So writing this and combining like terms is going to be negative 12x plus 7. So that whole thing is g of h of x. Okay, same process for number 4. Write f of h of x. And again, you're going to write that first letter first. You know what I mean? You're going to write that function first. In this case, f of x, which is 2x squared. But don't write x, write a large box squared. All right? So it's the same thing, 2x squared, but replace the x with a box. And in this box, right, in this box, I'm going to put the input of h of x. So go back to your functions, and h of x is 3 minus 4x. So in parentheses. Okay, now this is, hopefully, you remember this from our first unit. Bring down the 2. I'm going to expand that binomial that's being squared. So 3 squared is 9. The last term is going to be negative 4x. All of that squared is plus 16x squared. And the middle term is the first term times the second term times 2. So that's going to be negative 12x times 2, which is negative 24x. Then you can distribute the 2. Get 18 minus 48x plus 32x squared. And I'm going to go ahead and write that in order from the exponents, from the highest exponent to the lowest. So 32x squared minus 48x plus 18. All right, so 3 and 4, we're not going to do any more like this, but trust me, we're going to do lots of practice with those variables. Everything from here on out is going to go back to those numbers. Okay, so like we did with numbers 1 and 2, I am going to essentially, for the rest of these problems, be doing the inside function evaluated first, take what I get, which is the output, it becomes the input, what I plug into that outside function, that first function, okay? So I have f of g of 36. Okay, so like I said, I'm only focused on the g of 36 right now. It's all right, g of 36. Go over to my table. Here's the x values next to the g of x function. When I plug in 36, I get 6 for that y value. Now that's not it. That is the output for that, but it becomes the input for that first letter, which is f. So f of 6, go over to this x value, find 6. The y value for this one is 21. So f of g of 36 is the same as 21. All right, everything from here on out is going to be that pattern. So g of 16. All right, so focus on the inside and do g of 16. G of 16 from the table is 4. Remember, that's not the answer. That's what I'm plugging into that outside function. So g of 4 is going to be 2. So g of 16 is the same as 2. Okay, keep going. G of f of 4. All right, so I'm going to go to my f of x function. When x is 4, my f of x is 1. So f of 4 is 1. Use that to plug into g. So g of 1 is going to be 1 as well. So g of f of 4 is 1. I know I'm going very fast, but once you start to see the pattern, you're going to start to work quickly as well. F of 4 for number 8. So let's do f of 4. F of 4 is going to be 1. And then again, I'm plugging that into that first function, just also happens to be the same one. So f of 1 is negative 14. All right, so f of 14 is negative 14. Oop, I'm sorry, not f14. Why did I write that? Too many little parentheses. There we go. F of 4 is negative 14. My apologies. Okay, f of g of 3. So do g of 3. G of 3 in the table is, I can't do it. There's no number there that for 3. So because we can't do that, right, it doesn't exist, I'm going to write f of g of 3 is undefined. Right, you can't actually find a value if there's nothing in the table for that x value. All right, last one on this page. F of g of f of 4. Nice. So we've got the composition within composition. So again, work inside out. So just focus on the f of 4 first. F of 4 is 1. Now that's going to plug into the next one as you're moving inside out. So g of 1 is 1. And then that is going to plug into the very first letter, which is f again. So f of 1 is going to be negative 14. So this whole thing, f of g of f of 4 becomes negative 14. Whew, that was a lot. Okay, last page. Now, last page is going to feel very similar, but instead of having a table to find those x and y values, we're going to use these graphs. So we've got h of x is that parabola in red, g of x is that curve in green, and then we have f of x, the absolute value function in looks like blue. So h of f of 3. So I'm going to do f of 3. So go to the function. So this is my absolute value function. X value of 3, y value is negative 4. plug it into that first letter. So h of negative 4, that's the parabola. H of negative 4 is that y value of 5. So h of f of 3 is 5. Number 12, f of g of 4. Do the inside first. G of 4. So on that green function, we have f of 4, which is 2. Excuse me, g of 4 is 2, my bad. Plug it into the f function. So f of 2 is negative 3. So f of g of 4 is negative 3. Number 13, f of negative 3. So let's plug in f of negative 3, that inside first, and they get a y value of negative 4. Now that's not finished. I need to plug into that outside function, which happens to be the same. F of negative 4 is going to be negative 5. Sorry that some of the y values are tough to read. So f of negative 3 is the same as negative 5. Okay, 14. G of 1. So do g of 1. G of 1 is 0, right? It's on the x-axis. So now I'm doing g of 0. That's that first letter. So g of 0 is going to be 2. So g of 1 is 2. Okay, 15. G of h of 0. So we're doing h of 0 first. H of 0 is going to be 5. Then use that to plug into the g of x function. And g of 5 is going to be 0. So g of h of 0 became 0. Last one, we did it. F of g of h of negative 4. Oh, I love these ones. So start very far inside is h of negative 4. That's the parabola. And you get 5. Now that's going to be the input for the next function. So g of 5. G of 5 is 0. And that's now the input for the last one there. I should say the first one. F of 0 is going to be negative 1. So that whole thing of f of g of h of negative 4 became negative 1. All right, guys. I know I went super fast there, but hopefully you started to see the pattern. You got some time to practice with the homework. Come see me if you have any questions.